Hi, my friend. It's Pat Sloan here on Friday. Yes, it's Friday. Yes, I love Friday. Okay, so for our daily video, today is the Socialites block, and we are on, I think it's block number 16. So let's take a look at that. Got it here on my design board, on my stand. So block 16, there we go. I think it's really neat. It almost makes like a wreath. It's like sort of flying geese gone one way and the other way. It's a really cool block. I would think like in repeat, it would be really interesting. So the blocks, of course, for Socialite, if you're just new to this, it's a sew along. There are still, what are there, like 30 something blocks? Like 32 or something like that. And so you could still join in. You can do the 9-inch like this, a 6-inch version, or a 3-inch version, which is teeny tiny. They're darn cute, and a whole quilt of those will be fantastic. But I started this particularly when my wrists were a real mess from being broken, so there was no way I could do anything. So we had to go with the bigger size, which means, you know, it's a bigger quilt. So I think I would love to see, or love to have done one with a little bit smaller to do a wall hanging size. So the topic for today is friendship, because that is the name of the Socialite block. And a lot of us make quilts for a friend. And so today I would love to see a quilt you've made for a friend. That would be really awesome, because, you know, you might make it, you know, when they're not feeling well. Often that's the case, isn't it? Often, if you think back, the quilts you've made for somebody is when like they need a hug for whatever reason. If they're going through chemo maybe, or they've hurt themselves, like my friends sent me a quilt when I broke my wrist. You might make one if somebody's had a death in the family, so you are making them a hug to take with them, to know that you are thinking about them. But you also make quilts to celebrate. You have quilts for your friend who graduates, who might have gotten a promotion, who retires. Yes, I know a lot of you are looking forward to retirement, so you can quilt more. And those are really happy quilts. You make them for their birthday, anniversaries. So today, show a quilt that you made for a friend, not a family member, because they could also be your friend, but for a friend, for somebody else in your life. Okay, celebrating friendship, and you can download, if you're watching this first thing in the morning, the Fat Quarter Shop is not up. They're in a different time zone, and so the block might not be there when you see this video if you're watching it just as I publish it early in the morning. So check back, check back, check back. So now we have a lovely, lovely hearts. That is the kickoff today. Normally I'd like to have something on Monday and on Friday, but you know, we're doing a couple of things right now, so we're got 2 things on Friday for a little while, because the Lovely Hearts is going to run making hearts until Valentine's Day. I will each Friday, and maybe on another day of the week too, probably, talk about making the hearts. Now I wanted to get ahead a little bit because the heart pattern has 2 sizes. This is the pattern. There is a 12-inch size and a 35-inch size, and I'm going to do both of them, but I wanted to get ahead a little bit so that I could talk about the triangle papers today, because that is one of the features that the Fat Quarter Shop pattern is showing you. Is if you've never used triangle papers, this would be a great project to use it on. You don't have to have triangle papers. Those just make half square triangles. You can make half square triangles with any method you like. So first, let me show you where I am, because I have the little one all ready to quilt. It's a flimsy, but I've got it basted down. So there it is. Here's my flimsy. It is made with my Morrison Park. Let me just put it up close here so you can see it. There we go. So I took the reds and the pinks, and then all of the lights in Morrison Park that had reds or pinks on it. So there was, I think, 7 prints in here. Now, one of the things about this, and let's look at it close down here, is when you are using, give you a color, first a color discussion, because when you are using light backgrounds, you know, you want to be careful that when you're using light backgrounds, that this background part out here, that they don't get lost. Now, some of these are a bit more white in the background, and this is a little bit more creamy. This is all my Morrison Park. So they do stand up against that edge when I pull it back. But I was getting a little bit worried when I started making them. I thought, oh, you know, that might not give enough line here, but I'm totally happy that it does. There's enough definition and difference between the light background prints and this background that I used. Like if I had popped solid white, that probably would work too. And of course, if you did something else, let's say you put this on blue, like the heart would be on blue, or on some, like a deep raspberry maybe, then you have to worry about the darks. Like if you did a dark background, you'd have to worry that you didn't get that print. Like I could have used like this print and then not put it in the heart so that you didn't have it touching. The other thing I did up on here was I put a couple of darker ones up at the center so that I make sure I sort of got that definition of what was going on there. Your eye sort of sees that. It's not just all blendy. I didn't want a lot of lights right at the point because I didn't want to lose this point in the visual. So that's some color things to think about for your fabric colors so that you are sure that you're going to see everything. Now let me just hold this up and then I'll pull it back down again. The triangle paper, and these are triangles on a roll. They come like this. They're half square triangles, and so you will end up with half square triangles, and you're basically foundation paper, foundation piecing, so that you are sewing through the paper. I'm going to show you a sample I already sewed. You'll sew through the paper and then you'll remove the paper. The paper doesn't stay on there. It is there to give you a sewing guide. So let's take a look. I have one that I sewed, and I used my unicorn pins because I could. Who has, you know, you have to sew with cute pins. So here's the directions. Now the directions tell you to cut your fabric exactly the width. I prefer to cut it bigger because I just don't want one of them slipping a little bit and then I will lose a few, you know, lose something. So I oversize it, which means I will eventually have to cut or trim away on that line so that I get the exact perfect size. And all of these arrows, you're basically sewing where the arrows go. Sometimes you're sewing like this one unit is all in the middle, so you aren't coming out from an edge. So when I started this one, I started near an intersection rather than on the patchwork seam. I started in this intersection because then you will be cutting, you will be taking your ruler and you will be cutting on the solid lines, you know, in between all of this. So here's the back. If you wanted to see the back, I did end up using 2 different thread colors because I ran out of bobbin. And so there's sort of the grid work. And what you'll end up doing is cutting through these. You'll be cutting 2 different directions through all of this. Now Kimberly Jolly has a bunch of videos I will link you to underneath so that you can see them. So here I did a section that's a little bit smaller. You know, I sewed up another unit and I already trimmed off one grouping. Here it was like this. So I trimmed this away, I cut it away, and it had another square over here. So I'm going to show you cutting away a square. So basically you're going to cut them into these strip units. Once you have this piece, it'll look, you know, you will be cutting down and then cutting those apart to get strip sets. So like I sewed in this big chunk. You'll see I think Kimberly sews in just one strip set. So, but I just did a whole chunk of it because I don't mind sewing that way. So here's my cutting board, and now I have the solid line. So we're just going to cut one square away, you know, from this strip. So I'm going to cut on the line, cut one square away, see? And now because I oversized, you see I have this edge with paper, so I need to get rid of that so I don't have, you know, the extra fabric there. So that's trash. Now I have 2 half square triangles. This is just like if you were taking a square and sewing on either side of the drawn line. That's exactly the same concept. but you're on paper, which is keeping, I'll show you in a minute a little bit about the benefits of paper. So you cut down the middle, and now at this point we will remove the paper. So what I like to do is, it's thinner than your regular paper. So I like to press that paper, like make a seam, and then just get it started, and then pull one side, and then you'll be able to just pull off the other side. You know, ta-da! And I have the half square triangle. There we go. And I have one of them here that's already been pressed. So that is a 1.5 finished 1 inch. So you can see on my heart that this is, let's get it where, so he would be like here, he's, oh, you know, he's got the seam allowances right now. And they do look really big, don't they? But this will finish, once you eat up the edges all the way around, 1/4 inch all the way around, it will be a 1 inch square just like this. This is a 1 inch square right here. Dun, da, 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 da. So let me give you a few tips now for the sewing of these. There's just a couple of things that I think make it a whole lot easier. One would be if you are making the small one, particularly the finished 1 inch size, I would highly recommend starching your fabric or using, you know, sizing or whatever method you like to get it a little bit firmer, so that even when you're doing it with this method, you will have the fabric firmer, and therefore I don't think it stretches as much. You know, it doesn't have the it's not pliable anymore. You know, once you've made it starched, it's firm. And I get it not as firm as a piece of paper, but I usually like to, you know, get it wet, then let it air dry, and then press it. And so I would have the 2 pieces starched, and you're putting them right sides together with the paper on the top. And then you're going to sew with the paper on the top, because you're going to sew on the dashed lines, which are what the arrows are on, not the solid lines. Sew on the dashed lines. And it says that right on the little diagram, right on the directions on the paper. I also would recommend taking your stitch length down a little bit smaller. The reason is, when you go to pull the paper off, particularly if you start doing a whole lot of them and you might be talking on the phone or watching a show or listening to something, eventually you probably get going pretty fast. And if your stitch length is sort of normal size, you may end up ripping out the edge like that. Do you see what happened? I went to rip the paper out, and I used my regular stitch length that I sew with. So if I had made it a little bit smaller, and then maybe paid a little more attention while I was working, you know, then it wouldn't have ripped out one. If you rip out one, you can actually just go sew it, just go into the machine, and I would just, you know, start at the center here and then sew down and just close it back up again. So you don't need to like waste it. Heaven forbid you wasted 2 1 inch squares. I know some of you are like, you start hyperventilating about throwing away a 1 inch square. Oh, they're 1.5, sorry. Yeah, they're 1 inch when they're done. So those are a couple of tips. Now this week, or however long you want to take, you know how it goes. This is going to be just like the trees. Some people worked on it once a week. Some people started a tree and just made the whole tree all the way through. So these take a little bit more time than the tree, because they're all half square triangles. There aren't squares to make this heart. There is another heart on my website on the Lovely Hearts page that is squares with half square triangles just on the edges. And if you really, really don't want to do all the squares, you can go do that pattern just to sew a heart along. So hearts along with us. But go ahead and get your half square triangles made. Decide, are you going to make the bigger one? Now here is, is what the, I'll show you, open the paper for the 3 inch finished, 3.5. And so if you don't want to use papers, you don't have to. You just use your favorite method. But you can see the difference. See the difference in size? This is the 3 inch. Whoops! I knew that was going to roll on the floor. And here is the 1 inch finished. 3 inch finished, 1 inch finished. So you can tell that there's a big difference. And there's multiple sizes of these papers for half square triangles. So you can get whatever you're going to work with. You can cut out, you can cut this unit to just be what you want to sew. Like if you're just sewing a strip like this, it's kind of fun because you go choop, 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 then you're done. Then you have to cut it and take the paper off. All right. Let me know if you have ever used made triangles on paper. One of my years ago when I taught beginner classes at a local shop, for a couple sessions, like for a whole year, I taught all the beginners using the triangle paper. And they loved it. The beginners loved it. They don't know any other way, and they were very precise. So they totally loved it. That is one of the fun things about working with foundation, is that you're very precise. Okay, my friend. Links are down below. You can go watch Kimberly's full out. She sews them and everything. You can watch her tutorials on the triangle paper. They produce these now. They used to be a different company, and then that company retired, and Kimberly bought them. So Kimberly Jolly, the Fat Quarter Shop. So you can watch her videos. Also, if you would subscribe for me, please, please. I'm trying to get a big number of subscribers, because that will share my videos to more people, which is good. So we have more quilters who will find me. So if you subscribe, that helps me out. It doesn't cost you anything. You just click it. You don't even have to get notifications if you don't want. Just click it. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. See you online.